So we're taking this conversation further and allowing you to be part of it as well. For more on the future of the GNU, we're joined by the DA's Karabo. We're joined as well in a moment. We'll be joined by the ATM Zaman Jona. We've got from Build One South Africa, Nobuntu Hlazo Webster, and the Patriotic Alliance's Charles Saliers. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. Karabo, I think I want to start with you and just get an update from where the DA is sitting at this point with this ongoing fracas, a statement coming from the Democratic Alliance on plans that the DA is making now for tomorrow. You're opening criminal cases. Break that down for us.
Hello, Osnaledi. Thank you so much for having me, and good evening to your Newzroom Africa viewers. The point still maintains the DA is still the same DA as it was in the opposition benches as far as our steadfast commitment to fighting corruption to its teeth. As joining the government of national unity hasn't changed that brand of the DA, we haven't diluted ourselves as far as that brand is concerned. And it is on the basis of that one, we are laying criminal charges against Nobuhle Nkabane tomorrow, but not only lying to Parliament, but it constituting a case of fraud for giving misinformation to Parliament. But we're also saying that we do not trust her with the budget that she presides over, because not only when you give her the power to preside over 19 billion rands of seaters, does she decide to run a Christmas spree to give gifts to ANC cadres predominantly from her own deployment province KZN, but that even when you ask her to give you the facts on how she tried to apportion that 19 billion rands, she lies to your face in Parliament and lies to the Republic of South Africa. But also we know that NSFAS has been a mess since before she came in, and in a year she's taken office, she has not been able to correct it. If anything, her best strategy was to have another cadre deployment into NSFAS, its board and its CEO, to try to diffuse the situation. That hasn't helped. Students are still battling student accommodation problems. Students are still defunded without a course of clarity there. Students still have allowances still lagging behind. Students, as far as the application statuses and their funding statuses are concerned, are still lagging behind. And NSFAS's ICT system is still inaccessible for many South African students. So we know that she's not fit for purpose, and contrary to what she thinks, that she's the right person for that position, the Democratic Alliance and certainly the people of the Republic of South Africa are certain that she's not the best person for that job.
Okay.
But we're not going to give that budget, but the same principle applies with Thembisi Melane. If you can't trust Thembisi Melane with VBS money, how on earth do you then have the confidence to trust her with human settlements, a huge budget that is supposed to be building houses for the people of South Africa? If you can't trust David Mahlobo to come out of a state capture commission report unscathed and proven innocent, how do you then trust him to be in the Department of Water and Sanitation that is full of mafias in it, unscathed and able to use the people's money correctly?
Okay.
You can't.
All right, and just so and I will go back to the plans for tomorrow, but the point that you're making then we'll take this and unpack it later. But ahead of the Higher Education Minister's budget debate in the NCOP, and I'm reading now from the words of the Democratic Alliance itself, the DA will be laying criminal charges against Minister Nobuhle Nkabane. We'll wait to watch how that unfolds. Before we move on and bring in our other panelists, Karabo, I want to bring this to you. The update: the Democratic Alliance still standing by the fact that you will not be part of the national dialogue?
100%, Osnaledi. If the ANC is unable to have at least a shared vision with its GNU partners within government, if they are unable to do so, you certainly cannot trust them to be able to go present anything tangible as a draft to the people of South Africa that can be used as at least a foundation for the feedback that we would need from the people of South Africa. If you are in-house unable to stabilize what it is that you want to do for South Africans, if you have shown yourself as the ANC to be unable to hold constructive conversations that built the country, you certainly cannot be trusted to go outside to the Republic and listen to them. The ANC has shown themselves that they don't know how to listen to anybody other themselves. They're still under the illusion that they're governing alone. They do not understand that they're a 39% political party. They do not listen to reason, even when the people of South Africa are making a clarion call to something as simple as get rid of Nobuhle Nkabane with immediate effect, even when their own SASCO ancillary structure tells them we do not want this minister who's responsible for us as students, get rid of her. They don't listen to that. How can you then trust the same ANC to go listen to the people of South Africa? The same people of South Africa who in the last 31 years, their cries and their pleas have fallen flat to the ears of the ANC. The same ANC who, when the people of South Africa told them that they do not have money to pay more for bread and essential living, they thought it makes sense to continue to tax them further until the DA took them to court to push them into a corner to submerge.
Okay. Well, the argument that we've heard from the SG of the African National Congress is that the national dialogue is not a program of the ANC. It is a program of government and various civil society organizations, one of which, of course, is the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, with many foundations like the Steve Biko Foundation, right? Now, they've responded. Ismail Juseb of the F.W. de Klerk Foundation says the national dialogue isn't a government-led initiative. He says it's disappointing that the DA plans to boycott the event. Juseb accuses the party of failing to understand the importance of being part of such conversations. Let's quickly listen to what he had to say.
Well, we are disappointed with the Democratic Alliance for a number of reasons. I think the first reason is this. The F.W. de Klerk Foundation simply cannot understand the link between the axing of a deputy minister and the pulling out of a nationally significant moment like the national dialogue. We don't get that. Secondly, we believe it's far better for any political party, perhaps the DA, to be inside the tent, as I said, playing a constructive role, making sure that the narrative is not dominated by any one political party. Now, the other thing about this, Koli, is we are disappointed in the DA by using the national dialogue as a political football. I want to be clear. The national dialogue is not a government-led initiative. It is inherently a people-led, citizen-led process.
That's the view of the F.W. de Klerk Foundation on the DA pulling out of the upcoming national dialogue. Let's bring in some of the other parties that are joining us on this panel. We have the Patriotic Alliance joining us, also a member of the Government of National Unity. Charles Cilliers, you're joining us. Charles, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, just as a member of GNU, you listen to what we're hearing from a DA, the pulling out of the national dialogue, and then, the plan tomorrow to file criminal charges against the higher education minister. What's the discussion about all this inside the Patriotic Alliance?
Yes, good evening, and good evening to the viewers. I think that our impression of all of this is that it is a lot of theatre from the DA, and they did shoot their bolt quite early with this very dramatic ultimatum that was sent, and then they had to do something, and everyone thought they were going to walk away. We were confident they wouldn't, because we feel like we're seeing the pattern of behavior from the DA. So we were wondering, what will they actually come up with to try to save face? So I guess they scratched around in their bag of tricks and came up with, oh, well, we won't be part of the national dialogue, which is self-defeating. But they had to say something, didn't they? So now they're just making a bad situation even worse by saying that they're not going to be part of a dialogue that they signed up to when we signed the statement of intent. And, this really isn't constructive. To say that things are healthy in the GNU right now is obviously not the case. But you can see that the DA is wrestling with its own identity. They do take polls very seriously. And I think that there's been a bit of a panic in the DA ranks around polls that have said that they're losing some popularity among the voters whenever it looks as though they're being too soft on the ANC. So they're looking around for things to seem like they're being tough on the ANC.
Okay.
So I think we're looking at a party that really can't come to terms with how to be the DA of old that was in opposition with the DA that is now in government. And we really hope that they find themselves sooner rather than later, because they're bringing the country down with them.
Yeah, let's hear from Build One South Africa, Nobuntu Hlazo Webster, outside the Government of National Unity. You've been critical as a party of the GNU, but certainly with the passing of the fiscal framework, there was a sense that, well, was there an opportunity here for BOSA to find its way inside GNU? I don't know if that's what you're seeing at a time like this, for instance, but what do you make looking from the outside of GNU looking in?
Look, our position as Build One South Africa has always been that we do what's in the best interests of South Africans. And even now, we believe that this is actually what these parties should be doing, particularly as the two biggest parties in the GNU. I think one of the issues that we've always raised, and one of the reasons why we did not join the GNU right at the outset, was that forming a government of national unity without a governance plan, without a policy framework, and without any mechanisms for accountability except for a statement of intent, that was a mistake. The country needed, and actually even needs still now, a shared mandate amongst the parties with a clear set of priorities that the GNU partners have agreed on. How do we fix the economy? How do we fix issues like energy, fight corruption, fix education in the country, and a delivery plan around that? And it's very clear that that wasn't there. And so now what you find and what we're seeing, particularly now when you look at the briefing that took place from the DA in the weekend, is that ultimately it's South Africans that suffer when there is politicking that is happening at their expense, with the threat, for example, of budget votes. The idea that there could be a possibility that when the time comes on the 23rd of July for the appropriation bill to be voted on, that the DA could vote against that. The issue there becomes that you are putting housing at risk. You are putting delivery and healthcare at risk. It is South Africans, it is citizens that will suffer. And their reasons really are really political reasons, because all along the DA was going to work with the ANC in this regard. And this is just a response to the firing of a minister of the DA. And that really isn't what we need. We need proper leadership. At this moment, we need adults in the room and not politicking at the expense of South Africans.
Okay. The ATM, thank you for that. We appreciate your input. Zamajana of the African Transformation Movement. We did invite the EFF and the MK Party. Unfortunately, they were unable to join us. And it's interesting because, you know, our senior politics reporter in that piece talks about how the DA would need support from the MK Party and the EFF to be able to, for instance, be successful in a motion of no confidence. What are the talks looking like in the Progressive Caucus as all of this plays out?
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and the panelists. For us as the African Transformation Movement, truly, it is truly hypocritical of the Democratic Alliance right now. From the word go, they knew who they were getting in bed with. That's number one. Two, they knew when the time had come for the appointment of ministers, or they had files on the ministers and they never objected. And not only that, it is only when there is an impression on one of their ministers that they are now ready to go out fighting. They could have boycotted the constitution of government. They could have boycotted many other instances. Even when they boycotted the 2% VAT increase, there was no undertone or line that included the ministers in that. So for us as the African Transformation Movement, we see it as highly hypocritical that the DA now, in fact, the DA, if you look at its track record, you would expect that any individual who did not get a mandate like this would actually be on the firing line, even if they belong to them. So what we expected as the African Transformation Movement is that instead of this retaliation, they would start with their own to the members of the ANC instead of absolving their own and want to actually say they are going to bargain with this system, with this particular situation by actually saying that we are going to save our own by saying fire those ones. So for us, highly hypocritical. They are not honest. If they are honest, they would start with their own and then they go to the members of the ANC.
Okay, Karabo, I know you've got so much to say because there's been so much to respond to, and I will give you an opportunity, but let's quickly take a call. 010-594-6010 to be part of the conversation as well. What do you make for the future of GNU at a time like this as the DA and the ANC seemingly struggling with these tensions? Mike is in Cape Town. Mike, good evening.
Yes, hi, good evening. Good evening to the panel. My question is, I'm actually, perhaps I'm being naive, but should all not your guests on the panel be united in the fact that the DA should hang into the GNU as long as possible? It's clear to anybody that the ANC wants the DA out. I mean, just such pathetic reasons as the one they've given with Andrew Whitfield. When you look at the amount of money that is being stolen and the corruption that is going on within the ANC from our president downwards, clearly they want the DA out. And I would urge all parties to support the DA, because the DA will eventually will be thrown out by the ANC. The ANC simply cannot, and it will be impossible for them to tolerate the DA looking over their shoulders. We've got 100 billion transformation fund coming up, which is clearly just going to be a fund that the ANC will loot and plunder. There's an election coming up next year, and they need the money. Guys, please unite. Let's keep the DA in for as long as possible before they are thrown out by the ANC. Thank you so much.
I can tell you this, Mike. This is why we got parties inside GNU and also outside to get a litmus test on where everyone is standing on that matter. But Ronald is calling in from Makado. Ronald, good evening.
Good evening, Karabo. How are you, my sister?
It's Naledi. Karabo's here as well, though. Thank you for calling,
Naledi,
Ronald.
how are you? Sorry,
wow.
Naledi.
Go ahead, Ronald. It's all good.
Yes, I just want to comment on the issue of DA and ANC.
Sure.
I just want to say that DA, they're just using threats. If they want to leave, they must leave.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
I'm listening, yes.
Yes, because when the leader, the way USA, they were stating that they were there, they joined the GNU to block MK and EFF. So do you understand that the idea is not the issue of ANC?
Okay.
The idea is against EFF and MK. So what they're doing, they're just lying.
Okay. Thank you so much.
They need the blue light. They're enjoying the issue of the blue light. They think what they're doing is that's a threat that they're enjoying. All
right. Ronald, I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much for that. We need to take a short break. When we come back, Karabo Gagau of the DA needing to respond to all that's been said by our other panelists. And then, if the Democratic Alliance does indeed go ahead with the threats that they've made, that they would pursue a motion of no confidence against President Cyril Ramaphosa, how would the other political parties, certainly those that join us on this panel, vote in that motion? We'll get an answer from them on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we continue to look at the tensions between the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance and the Government of National Unity. One of the communications that we have received from the President's office, of course, on the withdrawal of the DA from the national dialogue is that the President's office has said while the party, the DA, can boycott the event, the ministers who don't participate in the dialogue would be acting insubordinately. So where does that leave John Steenhuisen, Minister of Agriculture? But let's take a look at a few WhatsApps that have come in on this discussion. Anonymous says, good evening, I agree with the DA. The ANC think it's still in power alone. At last, the Minister of DA is not on corruption, unlike ANC ministers. Anonymous, thanks for your contribution. Rajesh said, pride aside, GNU needs to work together. Rajesh, thank you so much for that. Delani Mfeka in Durban says, good evening, Naledi. As South Africans, we saw this coming. We're not surprised that this political arrangement between the DA and ANC might come to an end. Okay. Karabo, let's let you respond to everything that's been said by the other political parties. I know it's been a lot, but as we do that, we've tried to crunch the numbers and maybe you can help us. Tomorrow, you in the NCOP say you will not be voting in favor of this budget for the Department of Higher Education. If that budget does continue to pass without your vote, where does that leave, I suppose, your confidence in your ability to push back in the GNU even further?
I'll first address the 5 main points of the conversations, then I'll come to your 6th question.
Sure.
The first problem here is the question of why are we not starting with our own people as far as holding them accountable? The DA has made it clear that as far as Andrew Whitfield not receiving a response from the president, even though he wrote to the president 10 days before his departure, we've maintained that the sin concerned here does not meet the punishment. That is the bottom line. You cannot have Thembisi Melane, who's embroiled in a VBS, who the punishment from the president is, as far as the ANC is concerned, be moving her from one ministry to another, and that itself is punishment. That does not deal with the problem. That is not punishing Simelane. That is just keeping her same salary, her same cabinet position, just in a different ministry. So there's no way. And then you have Nobuhle Nkabane, has committed fraud effectively by lying to Parliament and presenting misinformation to Parliament, and there have been calls for her to be getting rid of, and she's still there, comfortably so, and not gotten rid of. And yet the president thinks it makes sense to harbor those individuals, and then for a person who goes on a trip that is not a state official trip, by the way, that is not paid for by the people of the Republic of South Africa's their tax money. It is paid for privately, that they go there, and the president still thinks it makes sense to that person to be deserving of a firing. That is a complete, utter, clear example of double standards there. And that's the point that we're making. That is number one. Number two, as far as the Patriotic Alliance is saying that they knew that we're not going to leave and that these are tricks and that essentially the DA is not going to leave altogether. The point here is this. Yes, we knew when we got into the Government of National Unity that there's a state capture report, commission report that needs to be actioned. That is why in the continuous conversations within the GNU, the order of business of government as far as rooting out corruption is concerned has never been off the table. That has always been on the table. And obviously the Patriotic Alliance won't be interested in telling you the truth that this is the conversation because it makes them look diluted and more prone to criminality than the Democratic Alliance is concerned. So it's not a new thing that the DA is anti-corruption. If it were a new thing, then when we, in the beginning of the GNU, we wouldn't have made a noise about Simelane and continue to say that she's not fit to serve in human settlements. If it were a new thing, we wouldn't have unearthed a new problem with CETA board appointments altogether. So it shouldn't be the case at all. At number three, as far as our participation in the national dialogue and it being a civil society-led initiative and us being prone to do it from the onset, it is true that in our statement of intent, we made it clear that we want to have a national dialogue that is going to comprise of civil society direction and participation as far as the hopes and aspirations of what their government is, as far as the hopes and aspirations of South Africans are in shaping government vision, government policy, and government direction for the people of South Africa. But what we also maintained here, Osnaledi, is that dialogue does not work if the same government that is supposed to take feedback from the people of South Africa is unable to meet each other, listen to each other, effectively and constructively deal with each other. That's the point we're making. So if we are in a GNU able to find each other on the same common ground on basic things such as corruption and getting rid of corruption, then by all means we'll be able to go to the people of South Africa. The last one Naledi, as far as insubordination, I quickly want to deal with the issue of the president of insubordination. What must be clear for the presidency and the ANC to understand here is that the Democratic Alliance is not an extension of the ANC. We never committed to being an extension of the ANC. That each political party in the GNU has its own responsibility to be true to that which they promised South Africans. What we promise South Africans is an effective government. If there is any threat against effective governance that we as the Democratic Alliance perceive, we will definitely make a noise about it. So, in the same spirit, if the ANC wants to serve the best interests of South Africans and stay true to the statement of intent that they signed, then they wouldn't find themselves in a position where they think it makes sense to fire a DA minister without effective consultation with their GNU partner. Number two, in cases where there are threats against corruption that have been raised and issues of ineffectiveness within ministries such as Nobuhle Ngabane, such as David Mahlobo, such as Thembesi Simelane are concerned that have been raised by the coalition partners, they would act on these things. As far as the NCOP, your last question is concerned on what are we going to do moving forward, the Democratic Alliance is not blind to the fact that we are not a majority in government, but we're also very much alive to the fact that we have political parties in this country who also vowed to the people of South Africa to be vanguards for the people of South Africa to fight against corruption. So the DA is not calling for a clarion, we're not making a clarion call to overhaul the entire budget, which is why we voted for the fiscal framework and we voted for the DORA. Our target here is not to say the whole government must collapse as far as the budget is concerned. We're saying particular ministries that are that are still headed by people that we do not have confidence in their capacity to lead should be targeted, so that those head of ministry should be replaced by people that can inspire more confidence for the republic to use those funds are concerned. That message is consistent to what all of these political parties in this panel are concerned, have been talking about. Gayton McKenzie has been making a noise to say government's money must be used correctly. ATM has been making that noise. Bosa has been saying they want to build one South Africa for as far as their money is concerned. So they are being disingenuous by not wanting to consider the fact that giving Nobuhle Nkabane money to go on a Christmas spree again with Cetus and Nesfas is giving Tembisi Melani, who has been caught with her hands in a cookie jar, is irresponsible.
All right, let me let the others speak. Karabo, thank you for that. I'm going to let Charles take over again of the Patriotic Alliance, and this is my question. If we get all the way down the line to the point where we are at the position where the Democratic Alliance has now put forward and tabled this motion of no confidence against the president, how is the Patriotic Alliance going to be voting? I'm trying to get a situation where we're able to get, some sort of, vision into the future of how this is all going to play out if we get to that, last point of the line. Do use this time, because there's obviously a lot of you. So if there's anything else that you want to throw in there, please do, and I'll let you know if you're running over. Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Look, that's obviously the nuclear bomb option to actually vote out the president, because as we all know here, if he goes, then that's the end of his second term, and we're all going to be back at square one, and there'll be a big discussion around who's going to be the president. So it is going to dump the country into crisis. And we do consider that monk irresponsible at this time. And it is not something that we can support. Now, I've heard everything that the DA has said. And Karabo, you're not wrong. We're not in favor of corruption. We're not saying that people who are accused of corruption shouldn't be held to account. But there is a clearinghouse in the GNU.
Working. That clearinghouse does not work.
Okay, guys, let's give each other an opportunity. I'll give you a shot at the end, Karabo, but the PA not having had as much of a platform as the others, and certainly yourself. Go ahead, Charles.
There are two agreed mechanisms. There's the party leaders forum, and there's the clearinghouse. And we do know that these issues have not been brought to the fore, and these threats of bringing down the GNU have not been tabled in those fora. So it basically points to the real motive behind this, which is a media campaign, which is an election campaign for the DA. Because if the intention really was to communicate with the president, with the ANC, to say, look, we are unhappy about ABC, and we will eventually even go so far as to vote the president out if you don't accede to our demands, then those things should have been tabled in those fora, but they were not, right? So it points to the fact that the DA may be trying to sell the motives as very noble and high-minded and moral and fighting corruption, but they're doing it in a way that makes it look as though it's a public relations campaign, and I think that's the point that we're making.
Okay. Nobuntu, I'm going to let you go ahead. Bosa's position, if we got to that, what Charles has said, the nuclear bomb ending of all of this, if it were the worst case scenario, I suppose, a motion of no confidence, a litmus test that would be on how other parties would vote. What would be the discussion inside Bosa? Would you support the motion?
I mean, we can't speak about a hypothetical motion of no confidence that you haven't even seen, because the reality is that a motion of no confidence has to arise from a constitutional failure of leadership, and that has to be a demonstrated constitutional failure of leadership, and it can't be over a spat over cabinet seats, and so we can't speak about that unless we know what that motion of no confidence is actually about. It has to be grounded in a constitutional breach and ethical violations. And we absolutely do believe that the ANC is by no means doing well when it comes to leadership. We know that there's corruption in the ANC, and that is why we use the various mechanisms that we have in Parliament to be able to address these issues, and legally that we use in order to be able to address these issues. And even as Karabo speaks about the budget and having a minister who presides over a budget, there are mechanisms that are in place. Referral to SIU, as an example, numerous mechanisms that exist in order to be able to deal with that, versus saying that the citizens must be the ones who actually suffer as a result of that. And so when it comes to a motion of no confidence, honestly, you don't defend democracy by threatening to collapse the state, and not every other week, as we're seeing is the case with the DA. We'll evaluate a motion on its merits when an effort's formally tabled, and we'll never vote for instability without cause. While we will always hold the GNU, the ANC, and all the various ministers accountable, and never ever defend unethical leadership, one thing I will tell you is that the motion must have constitutional vigor, and it must pass the test of constitutionality for failure of leadership. It honestly can't just be about politics.
Okay. Zama, the ATM's position?
Thank you so much. Well, for the African Transformation Movement, it is no secret that we have weighed the president a long time ago and we found him wanting. As we speak right now, we're in the Constitutional Court trying to overturn the decisions of Parliament on the issue of the violations of the Executive Members Ethics Act on the Pala matter. Not only that, when you look at issues of the performance of the economy, unemployment rate in the country, when you look at the poverty rate, when you look at the murder rate, definitely we have cause to believe that the president is not worthy of the throne. But as much as we are saying that, we also would like to say that we find it very odd that the Democratic Alliance has not actually taken a stance this serious to actually deal with this minister prior, including the president, when they knew very well that these individuals have constantly failed the people of this country. This is why we view this thing as opportunistic. It is about self-preservation. It is not about the interest of the people of this country. But we're clear when it comes to the president, he is truly found wanting. He is not supposed to be at the helm of leadership in this country.
Strong views from all of the parties that are represented on our panel. We're going to get closing comments after this short break. Do stay with us. I'll come back. Well, let's take a look at the views of our viewers this evening as we continue with this conversation of the back and forth between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. Of course, we didn't invite the ANC, but their voice certainly has been shared on the channel as well throughout the day. Let's take a look at a few WhatsApps. Selu says, South Africa's getting tired of a fake GNU with partners like a DA always throwing tantrum, threatening to leave, and the ANC on the other side threatening to invite EFF and MK. This brings no solutions nor joy to the population of South Africa. Sally, thanks for sending that one. Let's see. Stelo says, good evening. MK, EFF, DA must vote together to remove Ramaphosa, a vote of no confidence. Okay. Much further down the line, but thank you for sending that text. Goodwill says, evening, Naledi, but DA went in coalition with ANC knowing that they have ministers implicated in VBS scandal and state capture. They must leave if they want to. Okay. Goodwill. Let's take a caller. Darian is in the Western Cape. Darian, good evening.
Good evening. So my comment is really about, why the Democratic Alliance is doing what it's doing at the moment. Because what they did is they've been telling us all the time since they joined the GNU that they have done whatever they have done to ensure that MK and the EFF do not form a coalition with the ANC. So now it seems to me that DA is complaining about the corruption of the ANC. And I just want to know which corruption is acceptable for the DA. That's really my remark. Thank you.
Okay. Darian, thank you so much for that. And I do think that was something that was tackled a little bit earlier by Karabo, but we appreciate the point that you've made, certainly. I do want to move towards wrapping it up, and we don't have a lot of time, so I want to start with the other parties before we close off with the Democratic Alliance. But the Patriotic Alliances, compactly as you can, I'll give you about 45 seconds for this. Are you in support of the national dialogue? And tomorrow, when we see the voting of the budget in the NCOP, the Patriotic Alliance's position on whether or not that budget should pass?
Yes, we will be supporting the budget. And of course, we have been staunch defenders of the GNU. The GNU is not perfect. And I think that what the DA is failing to see, in which they failed to see from the start, is they don't hold all the cards. We don't want the GNU to change. We do want the DA to stay, but we don't want them to stay if they're going to keep destabilizing government. But the other options are not particularly attractive. So we would really want the DA to just face up to the reality that we're in a coalition and it's difficult, and they certainly can't get it all their own way. And, you know, they may not like this, but the ANC does have other options. And we're going to have to rely on the DA to mature into understanding that the country doesn't want to see how those other options play out. So let's see this GNU through to the end.
Okay. And Nobuntu, same question, in support of the Higher Education Minister's budget, and are you in support of the national dialogue?
So we're in support of the national dialogue. Our position on the national dialogue, however, is that there must be conditions to it. First of all, the national dialogue, we have to be clear in terms of what is the budget. The current budget that has been touted around is certainly not acceptable, given where we are at as a country and given our fiscal realities as a country. It has to be clear where it's being sourced from, and it has to be reasonable. You can't have these numbers that are being thrown around, which when you look actually at the appropriations that currently exist, if you look at the fiscal framework, you can't see where that would come from. So that's a first. Secondly, there have to be clear outcomes that we have to be wanting to get out of that national dialogue. We can't have a national dialogue just for the sake of it. Really, South Africans are tired, and as a country, we can't afford to just have more talk without action and without actual real plans. But most importantly, even as we speak now about the issue between the DA and the ANC, what's going to have to be important is that the GNU itself has a dialogue of some sort, an engagement of some sort about how they work going forward, because the instability that these kinds of tantrums, I'll call them that, creates in the country is something that we can't afford for another 3-4 years. And certainly when it comes to the budget, appropriations are really not something to play around with. You can't call bluff with appropriations. And the DA is going to have to be mature about how they come into that process. You spoke earlier about the fiscal framework and us supporting it earlier in the year. And the reason for that was that we would engage on the technical issues in the room instead of putting South Africans at risk of a collapsing budget.
All right, strong points, Zama.
Thank you so much. Well, for the African transformation movement, the marginalized majority of this country must be prioritized by everybody in the room. We think that it's imperative that when we speak about budgets, we need to ensure that we do not hold the country at ransom when there are alternatives in dealing with the individuals who are implicated in corrupt activities. The Democratic Alliance must explore all legal means that are within the ambit of the law to try and deal with those, but do not hold the country at ransom. There are people who are dying every day because of the challenges that we're faced with as a country. So it is very important for that. Can we afford a dialogue right now? I think the issue of affordability is very important, especially when you look at how many engagements we have had, how many documents are sitting collecting dust. Maybe amongst the 10 political parties, amongst the 18 political parties, we would be able, just going to the documents and the manifestos, be able to find a way that we could find a reasonable program of action that moves us forward. But I do not think right now we can afford a national dialogue.
All right, Karabo, I've got about a minute for you, but closing thoughts. But this is what I'd like for you as well. The plan tomorrow, who you're going with, the police station you're heading to, as you close off for us.
The Democratic Alliance will tomorrow 9:30 be at the Cape Town Police Station in Buitekant. I will be accompanied by the chairperson of the Federal Council of the Democratic Alliance, that is Mayor Helen Zille, as well as the Deputy Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance in Parliament, that is Baxolile Nodata. And our case is clear. It is a criminal offense to lie to Parliament and by extension the Republic of South Africa. And such action should be met with jail time. That's what we want for Nobuhle Nkabane. That is what we're going to be unpacking tomorrow. As far as her budget, Thembisi Melani's budget is concerned, David Mahlobo's budgets are concerned, the only alternative that exists outside of the cases that we're already pursuing, outside of the SAPS one we're opening tomorrow, outside of the ethics one that's currently underway, as far as the public protector one that is also underway, and as far as the State Capture Commission report that is already concluded, the only alternative that exists is to remove those people out of power, to take them away from a direct line of responsibility for state payers' money. Because they've already shown us in the past that they do not respect how that money is supposed to be used. They don't need to show us what more mess they can create with the people of South Africa's money. And political parties that think it makes sense to give the same people more opportunities to waste taxpayers' monies are lying to South Africans when they say they are concerned about corruption, that they want to root it out and they want the best level of representation for the people of South Africa. The DA has been consistent. We're anti-corruption. Nobuhle Nkabane must go. Thembisi Melane must go. David Mahlobo must go with immediate effect.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for your time. It's certainly been a fiery discussion. I think we can all agree on that. Charles Cilliers of the Patriotic Alliance, Karabo Khakao, National Spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, Nobuntu Hlazo Webster of Build One South Africa, and Mr. Zaman Jona, who is, of course, with the African Transformation Movement. We've got one caller. Let's take him. Why not? Marcus is in Pretoria. Marcus, good evening.
Prof. Muliwa, how are you?
I'm well. Talk to us, Marcus. We're listening. What are your thoughts?
Yes, ma'am, look, my challenge it is one that, you see, this Democratic Alliance is playing football about the people of South Africa. You know why I am raising this?
Yeah, go ahead, Marcus, I'm listening.
Yes, because had Cyril Ramaphosa not did what he has done, they wouldn't be doing all this nonsense that which they are doing currently. So today we are seated with all these issues, subjected to listen to all these issues that which they are raising on a basis that the ANC is busy rattling this DA within this particular GNU.
Okay.
If you can remember, the last time when the issue of the Bella Act, they did not vote with the African National Congress
Yes.
on the issue of the what you call the VAT. And the sole reason it had got nothing to do with South African, it had got to do with the Bella Act. All the things that which they are doing, they've got nothing to do with South African, but for themselves.
Okay.
I can
All
tell
right.
you, had
Marcus, I think your point is
Ramaphosa
made. And it is a strong point. I do unfortunately need to let you go. I did squeeze you in though. Thank you so much for calling in, Marcus in Pretoria there. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. We've got your day's top stories on the other side of this.